Stop playing fair. Be ruthless. Machiavelli's darkest power lessons: the world doesn't run on fairness. It runs on power. And power doesn't belong to the kind, the generous, or the honest. It belongs to those who understand human nature for what it truly is. Centuries ago, Niccolò Machiavelli shattered the illusion of moral politics. In The Prince, he dared to say what everyone knew but no one admitted: that goodness without strength is helpless, and that fairness without strategy is suicide. He wrote not for saints, but for survivors. He saw that every handshake hides a hierarchy, every friendship a calculation, and every act of mercy a potential weakness. We live in a world that still punishes innocence and rewards manipulation. From corporate offices to relationships, the same law applies. People respect power more than virtue. So if you've ever wondered why good people lose, why charm defeats honesty, or why ruthless leaders never seem to fall, then you're about to enter the mind of the man who explained it all. This is Machiavelli's world, and it's time you learn how to survive in it. Before we begin, understand this: Machiavelli never asked you to be evil. He asked you to see clearly, to stop assuming that the world is just, and start understanding how it truly works. These lessons aren't for the cruel. They're for the aware. Because once you understand manipulation, you can't be manipulated. Once you recognize power, you can wield it with intention. So listen closely. This isn't a lecture on history. It's a survival guide for the present. Let's uncover Machiavelli's darkest truths about power, fear, and human nature, and learn how to stop playing fair. Power is not granted. It's taken. Power does not wait to be given. It is seized, shaped, and defended. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. In The Prince, he studied how those who create new orders of power, new kingdoms, new companies, new ideas, must fight not only their enemies but the weight of habit itself. People cling to the familiar even when it traps them. They resist change because it exposes their weakness, their fear, and their dependence. And so, the moment someone dares to build something new, the world turns against them. Machiavelli wrote that founding a new order is the most dangerous task any human can attempt. It threatens the comfort of the old and demands the destruction of what came before. Moses, Cyrus, Theseus, and Romulus. He listed them not as saints, but as visionaries willing to fight through blood and betrayal for a future only they could see. To Machiavelli, their virtue was not kindness but clarity. They saw the world as it was, not as people wished it to be. This is the first dark lesson of power. Fairness has no role in the birth of greatness. Those who wait for permission become forgotten footnotes in the stories written by those who acted. Every transformation begins with an act of disobedience, an unwillingness to accept the limits imposed by others. Power is not a moral category. It does not ask whether someone deserves it. It gravitates toward those who are willing to endure risk, isolation, and misunderstanding. Alexander the Great was not given his empire. He carved it out of resistance. Julius Caesar was not handed Rome. He crossed the Rubicon against every warning. Their victories were not rewarded by the gods but achieved through audacity. Machiavelli admired that audacity because it exposed a truth few admit. The world rewards courage disguised as cruelty. He believed that fortune, the unpredictable element of success, only serves those prepared to use it. Fortune, he wrote, is like a river that floods. It destroys those who build no defenses. Preparation and decisiveness are the only ways to channel chaos into opportunity. Those who hesitate drown in the current of uncertainty. Those who act first shape the flood to their will. History repeatedly proves him right. Consider the founders of modern empires of technology. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all were once seen as obsessive, arrogant, even reckless. Each disrupted entire systems, defied conventions, alienated allies, and ignored the rules of politeness that govern ordinary ambition. But beneath their apparent ruthlessness was an unrelenting belief that progress requires discomfort. Jobs once said, "Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower." Machiavelli would have nodded. Leadership begins the moment one refuses to follow. Both understood that playing fair in a rigged game is simply another form of surrender. But Machiavelli's insight went deeper. He warned that success built on charisma or luck alone cannot last. To hold power, one must transform personal will into a structure others cannot easily undo. Moses used faith, Cyrus used loyalty, and Romulus used myth. They did not merely win, they institutionalized their victories. The art of seizing power is incomplete without the art of securing it. In every age, those who shape the future must appear ruthless to those who worship the past. Reformers are branded tyrants. Innovators are called arrogant. Revolutionaries are condemned as dangerous. Yet once their vision succeeds, society renames them heroes. Time forgives their ruthlessness because the world needs their results. Still, Machiavelli never confused ambition with cruelty. He saw ruthlessness as a form of discipline, not indulgence. It is the ability to act without waiting for universal approval, to make choices that preserve the long term even at the cost of temporary hatred. "It is better to be impetuous than cautious," he wrote. "For fortune is a woman, and if you wish to keep her under, you must beat and maul her." Crude language for a refined truth. Opportunity obeys the assertive, not the passive. Yet this aggressiveness has a price. Power tests the human mind like nothing else. The same ambition that builds empires can easily destroy their creators. History's conquerors are haunted by the same paradox. Once they seize control, they must fight to keep from being consumed by it. The drive that wins wars becomes the anxiety that starts new ones. Here, the Stoics offer a remedy Machiavelli respected but could not fully embody. Marcus Aurelius, writing centuries before, reminded himself that a man's worth is measured by the worth of what he values. Stoicism teaches that ambition must serve reason, not ego. You can act decisively without being ruled by desire. You can seek greatness without needing applause. A Stoic prince, if such a thing could exist, would understand Machiavelli's realism yet remain untouched by its corruption. He would know that cruelty used sparingly can secure peace, but cruelty loved for its own sake destroys the soul. He would fight for power, but only to use it as a tool for stability, not vanity. This is where Machiavelli's vision and Stoic wisdom intersect. Both agree that control over others or over oneself depends on clarity. The difference lies in what you seek to control. Machiavelli taught how to master fortune. The Stoics taught how to master the self. Combined, they form the philosophy of a complete leader, fearless in action, unshaken by success, and indifferent to praise. The tragedy of our age is that we mistake comfort for peace. We believe fairness will protect us when it only sedates us. Machiavelli would argue that most people are not free. They are simply safe, and safety without strength is a temporary illusion. The Stoics would respond that freedom requires inner strength, not outer dominance. Together they reveal a deeper equation. Fairness may guide your ethics, but courage secures your future. Every generation needs its builders, the ones willing to take the weight of transformation. But every builder must remember the cost. For every act of creation demands destruction. Every new order rises over the ruins of the old. Those who cannot stomach that truth will remain spectators in a play written by others. To seize power, you must first accept that you will be misunderstood. You will be called arrogant for refusing to wait. You will be accused of cruelty for making hard choices. You will lose friends who preferred your earlier humility. And still, you must go on. Because fairness may make you likable, but only resolve will make you remembered. Machiavelli was not wrong to admire those who conquered the impossible. But even he knew that power without purpose collapses. The world is filled with those who win but cannot rule themselves. They become victims of their own victories. Lonely emperors, empty founders, celebrated yet hollow. The Stoics offer the final correction. The goal is not to dominate but to build. Not to prove superiority, but to manifest vision. True strength is measured by what it creates, not what it destroys. Ruthlessness has meaning only when it protects something higher: order, progress, understanding. To be Machiavellian in the modern world does not mean abandoning morality. It means understanding that morality without power is a wish, not a shield. And to be stoic does not mean passive acceptance, it means strength without aggression. When you blend the two, something rare emerges. Clarity without cruelty, ambition without arrogance, fairness without naivety. The leader who acts with this balance becomes untouchable, not because they are feared, but because they cannot be manipulated. Power is never granted. It is taken by those who dare to see the world as it is, not as it pretends to be. And once taken, it must be governed by wisdom, or it will consume the one who holds it. That is the first law of Machiavelli's dark world. Courage creates, fear obeys, and fairness follows behind them both, pretending it led the way. The anatomy of ruthlessness has always frightened humanity because it exposes what civilization tries to hide. That beneath every polite society lies a quiet struggle for control. Machiavelli never glorified cruelty for its own sake. He studied it like a surgeon studies disease, dispassionately to understand how it works and why it spreads. In The Prince, he observed that cruelty, when used sparingly and with purpose, can be more merciful than weakness. For when a ruler hesitates to act, chaos grows in the space where decisiveness should be. He illustrated this through the story of Agathocles of Syracuse, a man who rose from poverty to become a tyrant. His methods were ruthless: betrayal, murder, fear, but his rule was stable. Machiavelli did not praise his morals. He praised his mastery of control. The lesson was uncomfortable but clear. A single act of necessary cruelty can secure peace, while endless indecision causes prolonged suffering. Weakness, he believed, multiplies pain. Modern readers recoil from this logic because it violates our moral instinct. But Machiavelli's point was not ethical, it was psychological. When fear and disorder spread, people crave authority. They forgive harshness if it restores stability. In times of uncertainty, even cruelty becomes attractive when it promises safety. The anatomy of ruthlessness begins here, with clarity of intention. The ruthless person does not enjoy conflict. They accept it as the price of leadership. They understand that harmony without discipline is an illusion. In every organization, family, or nation, someone must carry the burden of unpopular decisions. The one who hesitates, trying to please everyone, pleases no one. The one who acts, even coldly, earns reluctant respect. Ruthlessness is not rage. It is precision. It is the refusal to let emotion dictate judgment. History's most feared leaders were not the angriest. They were the calmest. Julius Caesar, Catherine the Great, and Napoleon shared an unsettling composure in the face of conflict. They could order violence without trembling because they believed it served a larger design. To them, hesitation was a greater sin than cruelty. Machiavelli wrote that men must be either caressed or annihilated. It sounds brutal, yet hidden beneath is an insight into human loyalty. Partial measures breed resentment. A defeated enemy left half-humiliated becomes tomorrow's threat. A rival given too much mercy will interpret it as weakness. The Machiavellian solution is to end conflicts decisively, never cruelly for pleasure, but completely for permanence. In modern life, this principle plays out subtly. A leader who avoids firing an incompetent subordinate out of pity ends up harming the entire team. A government that tolerates corruption to avoid scandal erodes public trust. Even in personal relationships, avoiding hard truths in the name of kindness often leads to deeper betrayal later. What begins as mercy ends as resentment. The ruthless act that cuts once may hurt, but the wound heals cleanly. The kind delay only prolongs the infection. Psychology confirms what Machiavelli intuited. The human brain respects certainty more than kindness. In experiments, people consistently rate strict but predictable leaders as more trustworthy than lenient yet inconsistent ones. Our nervous systems crave order. Fear of chaos outweighs fear of punishment. This is why, in crisis, we look not for the gentle but for the decisive. To understand ruthlessness, we must separate intention from emotion. True ruthlessness is not cruelty born of anger. It is discipline born of necessity. It is the ability to suppress compassion in the moment so that compassion can survive in the future. A surgeon must cut to save a life. A commander must sacrifice a few to protect many. A parent must enforce rules to teach strength. What feels merciless in the moment can serve mercy in the long run. Machiavelli admired Cesare Borgia for embodying this principle. Borgia used calculated cruelty to unify a divided Italy. He delegated harsh actions to an enforcer, then executed that same enforcer publicly to win back the people's trust. It was manipulation, yes, but also mastery of perception. The result was temporary peace. To Machiavelli, this was the difference between barbarism and strategy. The barbarian kills for pleasure. The strategist kills for purpose. Today, the battlefield is rarely physical. It exists in boardrooms, online spaces, and personal negotiations. The weapons are influence, information, and reputation. Yet the psychology remains the same. Those who hesitate lose control of the narrative. Those who act first define it. Ruthlessness now means clarity, knowing when to say no, when to withdraw, when to defend your boundaries without apology. The modern form of cruelty is often politeness that hides resentment. The modern form of ruthlessness is honesty without disguise. But even Machiavelli warned that cruelty must never become habit. Cruelty well used, he wrote, may be called good when it is applied once for all and is then turned to the advantage of the subjects. The moment cruelty becomes constant, it ceases to be strategy and becomes savagery. Stability born from terror decays into rebellion. The tyrant who rules by fear alone eventually teaches his subjects to hate him more than they fear him. The true art lies in knowing when to stop. Here the Stoics step in to refine what Machiavelli began. Seneca cautioned that anger is temporary madness. A Stoic acts decisively, but never from impulse. He commands but does not crave control. The Stoic form of ruthlessness is self-discipline, the ability to master one's emotions before mastering others. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to meet arrogance with composure, betrayal with reason, and hardship with calm. To him, cruelty was weakness masquerading as strength. Only the untrained mind confuses loudness with power. Imagine blending Machiavellian realism with Stoic serenity. You get a kind of psychological armor, compassion that cannot be manipulated, and decisiveness that does not destroy. The modern leader, or simply the modern individual, needs both. Too much empathy invites exploitation. Too much coldness breeds isolation. Between them lies balance. Understanding the world's harshness while refusing to become harsh within. In personal life, this balance manifests as boundaries. A Stoic Machiavellian learns to say no without guilt, to end relationships that drain purpose, to confront lies with quiet truth. They do not shout. They simply withdraw the privilege of access. Their silence carries more power than another's anger. In the professional world, it means acting before being cornered, making uncomfortable choices early so they do not become impossible later. The anatomy of ruthlessness, then, is not brutality, it is clarity under pressure. It is the courage to do what must be done once so it never needs to be done again. The weak postpone pain until it becomes catastrophe. The strong face it when it still obeys reason. Machiavelli would tell you that hesitation is the true cruelty. Every time you delay a necessary confrontation, you let resentment fester. Every time you refuse to draw a boundary, you allow chaos to claim another piece of your peace. Cruelty delayed becomes cruelty multiplied. But the Stoics would remind you, act without hatred. A decision made from anger poisons the outcome. The goal is not to hurt, it is to end confusion. When you must be firm without pleasure. When you must walk away, do so without arrogance. The Stoic sees no glory in domination. The victory lies in clarity. Ruthlessness in its highest form is elegance, the ability to move through conflict with minimal waste of emotion. It is the composure to separate necessity from impulse, strategy from cruelty, duty from vengeance. The ruthless are not heartless. They are efficient. They cut through illusion and act with precision. This kind of strength frightens people because it cannot be persuaded by guilt or flattery, cannot be emotionally blackmailed. It listens, decides, and moves forward. That is why Machiavelli considered decisiveness the supreme virtue of leadership. Not morality, not popularity, but the will to act when others freeze. And yet, the true test of power is what you do after you win. Many conquer, few sustain. The moment ruthlessness becomes identity, decay begins. The hand that once acted for necessity starts acting for vanity. Control becomes addiction. Fear replaces respect. What began as clarity ends as corruption. Machiavelli's dark genius was his ability to describe this cycle without judgment. He knew that power tempts every human in the same way, first as survival, then as self-definition. The only safeguard is self-awareness. This is where Stoicism saves the prince from becoming a tyrant. No man, wrote Epictetus, is free who is not master of himself. The world's throne is useless to one who cannot govern his impulses. Ruthlessness, then, must always return to reflection. After every decisive act, pause. Ask, did I act from necessity or from pride? Did I protect stability or just my ego? That small moment of awareness keeps the sword from turning inward. In the end, ruthlessness is a mirror. It shows who we are when comfort is gone. Some use it to dominate, others to protect, a few to build. Machiavelli revealed its mechanics. The Stoics revealed its restraint. Together they teach that to wield power well, one must know not only how to act, but when to stop. Because the cruel rule for a moment, but the disciplined rule themselves forever. The illusion of morality is one of humanity's most comforting illusions. It tells us that good people will prevail, that honesty will be rewarded, that justice is inevitable. But Machiavelli looked at history and saw the opposite. He saw that morality often served as a mask, a language the powerful used to justify what they were already going to do. In The Prince, he stripped away the illusion and exposed what everyone suspected but feared to say. Goodness and effectiveness are not the same thing. He wrote, "A prince must learn how not to be good." The words sound blasphemous, but their meaning is clear. Morality, as society defines it, changes with convenience. The same act can be called heroic or evil depending on who wins. A leader who clings to virtue when the situation demands cunning will lose everything to someone willing to bend the rules. Machiavelli understood that a ruler cannot afford the luxury of innocence. To survive, he must appear moral while acting according to necessity. This duality lies at the heart of political theater, both in the 16th century and today. Leaders proclaim their virtue publicly because people crave the illusion that power is noble. They wear morality like armor, not because it protects their conscience, but because it shields them from suspicion. The appearance of virtue is worth more than the substance of it. Everyone sees what you appear to be, Machiavelli wrote. Few know what you really are. Modern life has perfected this performance. Politicians promise integrity while negotiating behind closed doors. Corporations market sustainability while exploiting labor in silence. Celebrities post messages of empathy while living lives of extravagance. Even ordinary people curate moral identities on social media, broadcasting compassion while privately competing for approval. Virtue has become branding. Morality, once an inner compass, is now a stage act. Yet this is not a modern corruption. It is a timeless truth. Machiavelli saw it centuries ago. He realized that human beings don't want honest leaders. They want comforting ones. They want symbols of goodness more than genuine goodness itself. They prefer illusion because illusion is easier to digest. It gives the sense of order in a world that is not moral but strategic. But beneath his cynicism lies realism. He didn't say that goodness was worthless, only that goodness without power is powerless. A moral person who cannot act is like a physician who refuses to touch the wound. Machiavelli's world demanded leaders who could do unpleasant things for the sake of stability. To him, this was not corruption, it was responsibility. Still, his realism offends modern sensibility because it forces us to question our motives. When we call someone good, are we describing their actions or our feelings about them? When we call someone evil, is it because they violated an ethical rule, or because they succeeded where we couldn't? Morality is often emotional camouflage, protecting our pride from the uncomfortable truth that the world doesn't conform to our ideals. The Stoics approached morality differently. For them, virtue was not public theater but private discipline. They believed goodness could not depend on applause or reputation. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Be one. A Stoic doesn't need to appear moral because morality lives in his choices, not his image. This creates a profound tension between Machiavellian realism and Stoic ethics. One says, you must appear good to maintain power. The other says, you must be good even if it costs power. Both are correct, but at different layers of existence. Machiavelli's truth governs the outer world, the world of politics, competition, and survival. The Stoic truth governs the inner world, where integrity and peace reside. The wise person learns to move between them, playing the public game without letting it infect the soul. Consider a modern example. A leader managing a crisis may have to conceal the full truth to prevent panic. Is that deception or duty? parent may lie to a child to protect innocence. Is that corruption or compassion? The line between manipulation and protection is thin, and Machiavelli's realism helps us navigate it without moral paralysis. Life forces us to choose between pure honesty and practical necessity more often than we admit. In our time, morality has become currency. Outrage sells, confession entertains, and righteousness builds audiences. People perform virtue to signal belonging. They speak of justice, empathy, and equality, but often as a means of control, not liberation. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. Men are so simple, he wrote, and so obedient to present necessities, that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. That statement is not contempt. It is observation. Most people prefer the comfort of believing in moral order over the anxiety of confronting chaos. They willingly accept the illusion that the powerful act for their good. In truth, most power operates behind masks, some benevolent, some terrifying, all necessary. The problem is not that people wear masks. The problem is when they start believing their own disguise. For those who wish to live consciously, Machiavelli offers a different kind of morality, one based on awareness rather than ideals. Know what people value, but do not be enslaved by their approval. Act with justice, but understand how justice appears to others. Recognize that sincerity and strategy can coexist if guided by purpose, not vanity. He did not ask us to become deceivers. He asked us to see through deception. The Stoics refine this further. They remind us that moral purity is not the goal, moral clarity is. You cannot control what the world calls right or wrong, but you can control whether your intentions remain aligned with reason. Epictetus said, "If someone does wrong, the harm is to himself. If you choose to see it that way, he cannot harm you." The Stoic resists moral panic because he knows that ethics must begin from within. In practical life, this means rejecting the need to prove goodness. The Stoic Machiavellian doesn't advertise virtue. They embody competence. They act not to appear righteous, but to maintain harmony in the face of necessity. They can make hard choices without moral theatrics because they've already made peace with imperfection. A person obsessed with appearing moral becomes a prisoner of perception. They fear judgment more than wrongdoing. They serve the image of goodness rather than its reality. But those who understand Machiavelli's realism can see through moral manipulation. They know that outrage can be a strategy, that pity can disguise control, that righteousness can be a weapon. Awareness liberates them from emotional traps. And yet, awareness must not devolve into cynicism. This is where Stoicism rescues the soul from Machiavelli's darkness. The Stoic doesn't abandon virtue. He anchors it privately. He helps others without boasting. He leads without deception when possible, with necessity when required. He knows that power will always corrupt some, but that integrity cannot be stolen, it can only be surrendered. In the illusion of morality, the wise learn to live in two worlds. They wear the mask when survival demands it, but they never forget the face beneath. They understand that goodness is not what the crowd applauds, but what the conscience approves. They speak truth when it can help, silence when it can protect, and kindness when it can heal. Machiavelli's great service was to strip away our naivety. He taught us that virtue without strategy dies quickly in the arena of human ambition. The Stoics complete his lesson by teaching that strategy without virtue dies slowly within the soul. One guards the outer world, the other the inner. To live well is to balance both, to act effectively in the world of appearance while preserving peace in the world of essence. Appear moral if you must, but never mistake appearance for truth. Be strategic, but never soulless. understand deception, but never become its slave. Because in the end, morality is not an illusion for those who live it silently. It is only an illusion for those who sell it loudly. Fear versus love. The engine of control. Every person who has ever held power has faced the same question. Is it better to be loved or feared? Machiavelli did not hesitate. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one of the two must be lacking. He did not mean that affection is useless, but that love is fragile. Love depends on memory, on mood, on mutual interest. Fear, on the other hand, is simple. Fear does not require understanding. It requires recognition. To Machiavelli, love is a rope that people can cut whenever it tightens too much. Fear is a chain they cannot easily break. People will betray a loved ruler when circumstances change, but they will obey a feared one so long as the threat remains credible. Fear, he argued, is the most reliable tool for order because it binds behavior even when conscience sleeps. First, this idea seems cruel. But Machiavelli's realism was never cruelty for its own sake. He observed the world as it was, not as he wished it to be. And in that world, affection does not hold armies together. Discipline does. Loyalty inspired by love collapses in famine and war. Loyalty enforced by respect endures both. History offers endless examples. When a loved leader falters, followers turn away in quiet disappointment. When a feared one falls, they hesitate, uncertain, even after his power is gone. Alexander the Great commanded devotion through awe, not gentleness. His soldiers crossed deserts for him because they feared failure in his eyes more than they feared death. Centuries later, in every office, family, and institution, the same psychology plays out. Fear moves people when affection hesitates. But Machiavelli's insight goes deeper than politics. He understood that love and fear are not opposites. They are partners in manipulation. A wise ruler uses both, balancing affection to invite loyalty and fear to preserve it. If fear becomes hatred, it breeds rebellion. If love becomes dependence, it breeds weakness. The art of leadership lies in remaining just feared enough to be respected, just kind enough to be loved. The modern world has simply changed the tools. Where kings once used soldiers, today's rulers use narratives. Fear no longer comes from swords but from uncertainty. Political campaigns whisper that chaos waits if you vote wrong. Corporations hint that your life will decline without their product. Media feeds fear as currency, fear of irrelevance, fear of failure, fear of exclusion. The old chain remains only invisible. Even in personal life, fear is power. People rarely leave partners who quietly control their emotions. Employees obey bosses who project authority even when that authority is hollow. Children grow silent around parents who mix affection with threat. We are trained, often without noticing, to respond more to consequences than to compassion. The habit of obedience begins early and hides behind the mask of care. Machiavelli would not have condemned this. He would have called it realism. Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and covetous, he wrote. As long as you succeed, they are yours entirely. His point was not despair but clarity. Power that relies solely on love is power rented, not owned. The moment affection fades, authority collapses. Only fear gives power roots deep enough to survive betrayal. But how much fear is too much? Machiavelli's own examples show the risk. The tyrant who rules only through terror plants the seed of his own destruction. Fear stabilizes until it provokes hatred, and hatred is stronger than any command. Thus, A ruler must wield fear as a sculptor wields a chisel, carefully, removing what weakens without breaking what holds. He must make himself feared in such a way that if he does not gain love, he avoids hatred. The delicate equilibrium he described applies far beyond politics. Every leader, teacher, or parent walks the same line. Too lenient and they lose respect. Too harsh and they lose trust. Balance turns authority into harmony. People can bear strictness if it feels just. They will even accept punishment if they believe it preserves fairness. But they will never forgive humiliation. The Stoics would interpret this tension differently. They would say that both fear and love are illusions. No one can control how others feel. You can only control your own conduct. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Do not expect Plato's Republic, but be content if even one small thing goes well." For the Stoic, power based on fear or love is fragile because it depends on other people's minds. Real power lies in self-command. Yet Stoicism doesn't contradict Machiavelli, it completes him. Machiavelli shows how to command others. Stoicism shows how to command yourself. The Stoic ruler might still use fear and love as instruments, but he would never be owned by them. He would recognize emotions as tools, not truths. When others fear him, he would not gloat. When they love him, he would not depend. His authority would rest not on sentiment but on steadiness. Imagine such balance in a modern leader. Calm but firm, compassionate but unshakable, approachable but not vulnerable to flattery. This is Stoic charisma, a power born of emotional stillness. People follow not because they fear punishment or crave affection, but because they sense composure. In a chaotic world, stability feels sacred. The one who embodies it commands loyalty effortlessly. Fear and love are ancient engines of control, but both require maintenance. Fear must be refreshed through reminders of strength. Love must be renewed through gestures of care. A leader who forgets either loses balance. Fear without compassion breeds resistance. Compassion without boundaries breeds contempt. The wise alternate between the two as nature alternates between storm and calm. In everyday life, these dynamics appear quietly. In relationships, we maintain peace not through constant affection but through respect. In work, we respect those who can say no more than those who say yes to everything. People trust firmness because it feels predictable. The softest leaders are often the most resented because their kindness seems uncertain. Love can be misread. Fear rarely is. Still, the highest form of power is neither love nor fear. It is respect. Respect is what remains when love fades and fear softens. It grows from consistency, from doing what is right without explanation or apology. Respect cannot be forced, and it cannot be flattered into existence. It must be earned through integrity and decisiveness over time. Both Machiavelli and the Stoics sought this kind of respect. The difference is in where they found it. Machiavelli believed it arose from mastery of perception, the ability to appear composed even in turmoil. The Stoics believed it arose from mastery of the self, the ability to remain composed whether watched or alone. One controls others through image. The other controls the image through inner peace. The truth is that humans are drawn to those who seem unafraid of losing affection. We interpret that as confidence. A person who needs love too desperately invites manipulation. The one who can let go of approval holds invisible authority. Fear and love intertwine here. People fear disappointing those they admire, and they love those whose respect feels difficult to earn. Machiavelli's grim wisdom survives because it mirrors the patterns of human nature that have never changed. Whether in a Renaissance court or a modern corporation, the dynamics are the same. People obey clarity. They crave structure. They distrust softness unbacked by strength. To rule or even to survive, you must understand this instinct. But the Stoics remind us that understanding power is not the same as worshiping it. Use fear and love consciously, but let neither dictate who you become. The goal is not to control everyone, but to stop being controlled by their reactions. You cannot force love or eliminate fear, but you can remain steady when both shift. To be feared without cruelty, to be loved without weakness, to be respected without performance. That is mastery. It is not achieved by pretending to be invincible, but by being transparent about what truly cannot be shaken. The greatest rulers, thinkers, and creators have always radiated this paradoxical calm. They seem ruthless, yet peaceful, distant, yet magnetic. They do not demand loyalty. They draw it naturally. The world may never stop choosing between love and fear, but those who see through the game can rise above it. Machiavelli showed how to use human nature. The Stoics showed how to transcend it. When combined, they teach that real power is quiet, it does not beg affection, and it does not impose terror. It simply endures, steady amid emotion, unyielding in purpose. Because love can be betrayed, and fear can be forgotten. But calm authority, rooted in awareness, balanced by discipline, cannot be overthrown. It lives beyond both emotion and illusion. It is what remains when power outgrows its need to be felt. The masks of power, every system of power, whether an empire, a government, or a single individual, survives by illusion. Machiavelli understood this with almost surgical clarity. He wrote that a ruler must learn to appear merciful, faithful, humane, sincere, and religious, but be ready to act in the opposite way when necessity demands it. The survival of power depends not on what is true, but on what seems true. He called this the art of appearing good. It was not hypocrisy. It was strategy. People, he observed, judge by what they can see. They cannot read intention, only expression. They do not look into the heart of a leader, they look at the performance of virtue. And because most are more moved by appearance than by substance, the mask becomes more powerful than the face. In the courts of Renaissance Italy, masks were literal. Dukes and princes played moral theater before their subjects, feigning piety and humility while manipulating alliances and assassinations behind closed doors. Machiavelli saw it all. He worked among men who quoted scripture in the morning and signed death warrants at night. Their hypocrisy didn't disgust him. It fascinated him. He saw that power is sustained not by purity but by perception. Centuries later, nothing has changed. The modern world wears digital masks. Politicians shape images through cameras. Executives rehearse sincerity before shareholders. Influencers sell authenticity through filters and lighting. Even ordinary people craft online identities, carefully polishing virtues for display. We curate our lives into narratives designed to be believed. The mask has not vanished, it has evolved. Machiavelli would not have condemned this evolution. He would have called it inevitable. Human beings cannot survive in society without performance. We play roles: parent, worker, friend, believer, and each role demands a mask. Civilization itself depends on this arrangement. Without masks, there is chaos. But he also warned that when people forget they are wearing masks, illusion becomes madness. The actor becomes the character, and the performance devours the person. The danger is not deception, it is identification. The ruler who believes his own propaganda loses touch with reality. The individual who believes their curated image begins to rot behind the smile. Once the mask becomes identity, self-awareness disappears. Machiavelli's prince was advised to wear masks consciously, like armor, removing them when alone. To forget the distinction between appearance and truth is to surrender control over both. This insight explains the strange duality of modern power. On the surface, we value transparency, yet we reward performance. Leaders who appear strong are trusted more than those who speak truth. Corporations with charming branding are forgiven faster than those that admit fault. Even in personal life, confidence often outranks honesty. We want to believe in a story, not a struggle. Machiavelli knew that humanity, at its core, prefers a beautiful lie to a painful truth. The psychology behind this is simple. The human mind equates appearance with safety. We evolved to judge threats by what we can see. When someone looks calm, competent, or virtuous, we lower our guard. The mask, therefore, becomes a weapon, a way to disarm suspicion. A soft voice hides ambition. A gentle smile conceals control. The more convincing the mask, the less resistance it meets. But Machiavelli's brilliance lies not in teaching deceit. It lies in revealing that everyone already deceives. Those who deny it merely deceive themselves. Power, he wrote, belongs to those who understand human nature, not those who moralize against it. The skilled leader learns to act the part others need to see, while keeping an inner life untouched by illusion. Here, Stoicism once again offers balance. The Stoics also wore masks, not to deceive others, but to protect the self. Marcus Aurelius called the public world a theater of roles. Remember, he wrote, that you are an actor in a drama of such sort as the author chooses. But unlike Machiavelli's prince, the Stoic performs without attachment. He plays his part sincerely, yet he knows it is a part. When the role ends, he lays it down with peace. In this difference lies the moral distinction between manipulation and mastery. The Machiavellian mask is worn to control others. The Stoic mask is worn to preserve inner calm amid chaos. One hides intention, the other protects essence. Yet both understand that truth cannot survive without strategy. A Stoic would say that the only mask worth keeping is composure. In moments of crisis, when fear and chaos surge, the appearance of calm becomes a form of mercy. It reassures others even when you are uncertain, prevents panic and creates order. To remain tranquil when others lose themselves is to wear the noblest mask of all. Not deceit, but discipline. Still, deception has its uses. Machiavelli would argue that pretending to virtue allows the ambitious to act without interference. People forgive ruthless decisions more easily when they come from someone who looks compassionate. He advised princes to keep religion close, even if they didn't believe, because faith inspires obedience. Appear moral, he said, and you can do what immorality requires. In politics, perception is reality. This principle rules modern media. The most successful manipulators are those who seem incapable of manipulation. The philanthropist who markets kindness while exploiting influence. The leader who performs empathy while chasing power. The activist who condemns corruption while feeding from it. Machiavelli predicted them all. He knew that morality itself could be weaponized, that the mask of virtue can hide the darkest ambition. But he also warned that masks crack under pressure. When fortune shifts, when crisis strikes, illusion collapses. The prince who has built authority on appearance alone will find no loyalty when his mask breaks. Those who followed him for the image will abandon him for a new performance. Real power, therefore, requires substance behind the show, a core of intelligence and adaptability. The Stoics would call this inner stability. They would say, let your actions be your disguise. If your character remains constant, you need no deception to survive. The Stoic faces the world's masks without fear because his peace does not depend on perception. He may play the part, but he knows he is not the part. This is the antidote to Machiavellian corruption, awareness without attachment. Wear the mask when necessary, but never forget the face beneath. In a world obsessed with presentation, authenticity becomes the rarest power. The one who can navigate illusion while remaining sincere commands respect from both the deceived and the deceivers. To master the masks of power, then, is not to abandon truth but to protect it. It means understanding that honesty must sometimes wear disguise to survive among liars. It means choosing when to reveal and when to conceal, when to speak and when silence says more. The mask is a tool, not a home, and perhaps that is Machiavelli's deepest, unspoken warning. The longer you wear the mask, the more it shapes you. Eventually, you forget who you were before it. The eyes behind it grow tired. The face beneath it grows strange. The public performance devours the private self. To maintain power without losing the soul, one must remove the mask when no one is watching and remember what the truth feels like. The Stoics would tell you to do this every morning. In stillness, strip away the day's roles and remind yourself of what cannot be faked. The quiet awareness of existence. Everything else, status, reputation, admiration, is costume. What remains when the costume falls is character. Machiavelli's realism reveals the necessity of illusion. The Stoics reveal the necessity of inner truth. Together they describe the paradox of survival in any age. To lead others, you must manage appearance. To lead yourself, you must see through it. The wise do both. They master the theater of life without becoming its clown. They speak the language of illusion, yet live by the grammar of honesty. They know that masks rule the world, but they never mistake the mask for the face. Because in the end, appearances fade, empires fall, and every mask cracks in silence. Only one thing endures, the person who can look in the mirror when the mask is gone and still recognize who they are. Stoic charisma. Mastery without cruelty after the storm of Machiavelli's lessons. Ruthlessness, fear, manipulation. There must come calm. Power taken and kept by strategy needs something more enduring to sustain it. That something is presence. Not the kind built on image or intimidation, but the quiet magnetism of someone who commands themselves first. This is what the Stoics called mastery. Not the domination of others, but the domination of impulse. Machiavelli understood control as external. The Stoics saw it as internal. Between them lies the complete picture of strength. The Machiavellian moves the world by understanding people. The Stoic moves people by understanding himself. Together, they form what could be called Stoic charisma, an influence that neither manipulates nor submits. It doesn't seek approval, yet it earns it. It doesn't chase admiration, yet it draws it effortlessly. This kind of presence is rare because it cannot be performed. It isn't charm or wit. It is silence used with precision, emotion tempered by clarity. The Stoic radiates calm not because life is easy, but because he has accepted its difficulty. He has stopped begging the world to be kind. His composure is not coldness. It is compassion filtered through discipline. People feel safe around him because he is not ruled by reaction. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire but lived as though he ruled himself first. His journal, written for no audience, reminds him to remain humble among flattery and steady under attack. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, The pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it. A Machiavellian might call that detachment a weakness. The Stoic knows it is armor. The man who cannot be provoked cannot be controlled. In modern life, Stoic charisma replaces force with gravity. It attracts by stability, not spectacle. Think of the people who draw attention by saying little, who hold a room by their steadiness rather than their words. They are Machiavellian in perception, they understand what others expect, but Stoic in execution, they never lose themselves in the act. They move with purpose because they no longer waste energy fighting the inevitable. Machiavelli taught that leaders must appear virtuous. The Stoics teach that virtue should need no appearance. True charisma is not projection. It's presence. The Machiavellian learns the performance of calm. The Stoic becomes it. And in a world addicted to drama, calm is rebellion. The roots of this serenity lie in emotional independence. The Stoic does not rely on others for validation. Praise and blame are equal noise. If someone speaks ill of you, Epictetus advised, consider whether you have not deserved it. If you have, correct yourself. If not, laugh it off. It is impossible to humiliate someone who has nothing to hide. It is impossible to manipulate someone who has nothing to prove. This detachment is not arrogance, it's freedom. Stoic charisma thrives on 3 disciplines: perception, action, and will. Perception teaches how to see clearly without distortion. Action trains the habit of doing what reason demands, not what emotion urges. Will prepares the mind to accept what cannot be changed. These disciplines make a person reliable, something rarer than intelligence or beauty. Reliability builds trust, and trust builds power that no cruelty can match. Imagine 2 leaders facing crisis. One shouts, threatens, demands loyalty. The other listens, weighs, and decides quietly. Which one inspires more confidence? People fear the first but depend on the second. Fear fades when danger passes. Respect endures because it feels earned. Stoic leadership, therefore, does not compete with Machiavellian cunning, it outlasts it. The Stoic's restraint also redefines ruthlessness. Instead of cutting others down, he cuts through illusion. He is ruthless only with falsehood, including his own. When anger arises, he observes it as a passing weather, not a command. When envy whispers, he reminds himself that others' success is not his failure. His strength is invisible because it is internal. Yet its effect is visible everywhere. Conflicts end quicker. Followers feel calmer. Enemies lose footing in the absence of emotional fuel. Stoic charisma also transforms relationships. Instead of seeking to impress, it seeks to understand. Instead of reacting to manipulation, it exposes it by refusing to participate. The Stoic gives the gift Machiavellian power cannot: peace. He doesn't need to win every argument, because his worth doesn't depend on victory. That alone disarms those who crave control. This composure gives rise to a new kind of charm, what could be called quiet authority. It isn't theatrical confidence but graceful certainty. When a Stoic speaks, words carry weight because they come from silence, not ego. When he acts, it feels inevitable, not forced. People follow because they trust the steadiness behind the movement. But this balance is difficult to sustain. Without Stoic awareness, Machiavellian strategy becomes cruelty. Without Machiavellian realism, Stoic calm becomes passivity. Together they create a powerful symmetry, wisdom of mind matched with precision of action. The Stoic keeps the heart clean. The Machiavellian keeps the hands effective. Each without the other fails. Morality without strategy is impotence. Strategy without morality is rot. The synthesis is simple but rare, ruthless clarity guided by compassion. A Stoic Machiavellian acts with purpose but without malice, defends peace without apology, and seeks influence without addiction to it. He can command because he does not crave command. He can lead because he has already led himself. Seneca described this balance beautifully. He who is brave is free. Machiavelli would have added, he who is brave rules. Freedom and rule are two faces of the same courage, the willingness to confront reality without illusion. The brave do not need to control every outcome because they trust their preparation. They meet the unpredictable with discipline, not panic. Modern culture confuses calm with weakness, but calm is what remains when strength matures. The loud, the aggressive, the attention-hungry, they burn fast. The composed endure. The quiet leader may not dominate headlines, but history often remembers him longer. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, they wielded no armies, yet their ideas outlived emperors. Influence born of character transcends circumstance. Charisma built on noise vanishes when the audience leaves. Charisma built on presence grows in silence. That is why Stoic charisma is so disarming. It cannot be bought, taught, or faked. It comes from the slow, deliberate work of knowing oneself completely. Once you know your own weaknesses, no one can use them against you. Once you know your own desires, no one can bait them. Once you master your reactions, manipulation loses its edge. This self-command is contagious. People around a Stoic begin to slow down, to breathe deeper, to mirror the steadiness they sense. In a room of anxious voices, one calm tone resets the entire rhythm. Power that begins inside inevitably shapes the world outside. And yet, the Stoic never mistakes composure for superiority. He knows that fortune can destroy even the disciplined. What protects him is not arrogance but acceptance. If you are kissed by fortune, Seneca warned, she can also strike. By remembering this, the Stoic remains humble. By preparing for loss, he cannot be surprised by it. The ultimate strength is the ability to endure without bitterness. In the final balance, Stoic charisma redefines power itself. To rule does not mean to conquer. It means to remain intact. The Machiavellian manipulates others to maintain order. The Stoic orders himself to maintain freedom. Both understand that life is struggle, but only one finds serenity within it. To lead through fear is easy. To lead through love is fragile. But to lead through respect, earned by consistency, reinforced by calm, is nearly unbreakable. The Stoic achieves this not by pretending to be infallible, but by showing that he cannot be shaken. The more he accepts imperfection, the more others trust his steadiness. The Stoic prince, if such a being could exist, would look ordinary. He would smile rarely, speak gently, and make decisions slowly. But those decisions would last. He would forgive without forgetting, act without boasting, and prepare for betrayal without paranoia. His strength would not come from domination, but from depth. And when he finally loses power, he would not lose himself. Because his authority was never borrowed from fear, nor purchased through love. It was self-generated, anchored in the only empire no enemy can invade, the mind at peace with itself. This is mastery without cruelty. The kind of rule that leaves no scars, only balance. It is not the legacy of conquest, but of composure. The calm ruler of the self becomes untouchable, because he rules the only kingdom that endures when all others fall. The modern Machiavellian, the world Machiavelli wrote for, has changed, but its laws have not. The palaces have become boardrooms, the crowns have become logos, and the court intrigue plays out in algorithms and comment sections instead of candlelit halls. Yet the same invisible game continues. Who controls perception, controls reality. If Machiavelli lived now, he would not write for princes. He would write for anyone who wants to survive the endless theater of modern power. He would study how politics, media, and business use attention as their new weapon. He would note how people trade privacy for approval, how outrage replaces logic, and how charisma triumphs over competence. He would see that his prince has been reborn, influencers who move markets with a sentence, CEOs who bend nations through vision, and ordinary individuals who command digital empires from bedrooms. The tools are new, but the psychology is ancient. People still worship confidence. They still prefer stories to truth. They still reward appearance over substance. Every platform, every brand, every ideology depends on one unspoken principle. Control the narrative, and the facts no longer matter. The modern Machiavellian understands this instinctively. They do not chase truth, they manage perception. They know that attention is the currency of power, and those who hold it can shape emotion, loyalty, even memory. They craft identities not to express themselves but to survive the information war. Every post, every statement, every silence is calculated. Not deceitfully but strategically. They understand the battlefield is no longer physical, it is psychological. Machiavelli's Renaissance was an age of violence. Ours is an age of persuasion. The sword has been replaced by the screen. Yet persuasion, like fear, demands precision. Too soft and you are ignored. Too harsh and you are hated. The new ruler walks this digital tightrope daily, balancing between visibility and vulnerability. To be unseen is to disappear. To be too visible is to become prey. In politics, the modern prince speaks not to govern, but to maintain belief. Policies matter less than perception. Apologies are crafted. Outrage is rehearsed. Empathy is performed. The most successful leaders today follow Machiavelli's advice unconsciously. They appear compassionate, even when calculating, moral, even when manipulative. They are not monsters, they are mirrors. They reflect what the people want to believe, then use that belief to shape the world. The same pattern thrives in business. Tech visionaries are crowned as prophets of progress, even as they consolidate control over attention and data. The cult of innovation disguises ambition as altruism. Every product launch is a sermon. Every algorithm a sermon's proof. Machiavelli's princes conquered cities. Our princes conquer minds. They rule not through fear of punishment, but through fear of exclusion. And in daily life, ordinary people perform the same ritual. Social media has turned everyone into their own strategist. Every caption is a campaign. Every photo an election. We curate ourselves for approval, measuring worth by applause. We manage impressions because impressions are leverage. We have all become little Machiavellis, crafting masks not for kingdoms, but for survival in a world that judges before it understands. Machiavelli would not mock this. He would call it inevitable. He would remind us that those who refuse to play the game still live by its rules. The naive idealist who ignores perception becomes its victim. Awareness is not corruption, it is defense. The question is not whether to wear a mask, but whether you control it or it controls you. Yet the modern world presents a new danger. The constant performance of power erodes the soul faster than ever. The Prince of Florence played roles for courtiers. The citizen of today performs for millions. The pressure to appear confident, moral, relevant, and invincible has created a quiet epidemic of emptiness. Behind every polished image lies exhaustion, the cost of endless strategy. Here, Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes medicine. In a world where attention defines value, Stoicism restores depth. It reminds you that your worth is not measured by reaction, that your peace does not depend on likes or outrage. You have power over your mind, Marcus Aurelius wrote, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The modern Machiavellian who lacks stoicism burns out quickly. They win the spotlight but lose themselves in it. Their performance devours their purpose. But the one who combines Machiavellian clarity with stoic calm becomes nearly untouchable. They play the game without being owned by it. They understand perception but do not confuse it with identity. They act strategically yet remain sincere. This synthesis is what the age demands. Awareness without cynicism. Strength without cruelty. Influence without vanity. The modern world doesn't need more conquerors. It needs individuals immune to manipulation, capable of thinking independently even as noise surrounds them. To live as a modern Machiavellian is to see power not as domination but as understanding. Power is the ability to remain conscious when others are consumed by emotion. It is the discipline to say less when noise becomes currency, to act with intention when chaos rewards reaction. The strongest person in any room is the one who doesn't need to prove it. Machiavelli would recognize power in today's silence. The calm thinker who resists outrage, the worker who quietly creates value, the leader who chooses clarity over applause. He would call them princes of perception. The Stoics would call them free. This kind of freedom comes from strategy tempered by awareness. It does not reject ambition. It refines it. It doesn't demand detachment from the world. It teaches detachment from illusion. To see clearly is the ultimate rebellion. Every era worships something: wealth, fame, progress, virtue. But beneath each, the same truth remains: those who understand human nature govern it, and those who don't become governed by it. The modern Machiavellian sees through the illusions of morality, the theater of virtue, the noise of outrage. They know that power has always belonged to those who understand fear, desire, and attention. Yet they also know that without stoic balance, understanding becomes manipulation, and manipulation becomes decay. The goal is not control but consciousness. The victory is not in ruling others, but in remaining unruled by delusion. So, what does it mean today to stop playing fair and be ruthless? It means stop expecting fairness from systems designed for survival. It means stop apologizing for ambition. It means stop letting guilt be a leash for those who thrive on your restraint. But it also means to act with discipline, not cruelty. To move through a world of masks while keeping your soul uncovered. Because the ultimate Machiavellian truth is not that people are wicked. It is that they are predictable. And the ultimate Stoic truth is not that you must escape the world, but that you must master your response to it. Combine the two and you no longer play the game, you define it. In the end, every generation writes its own prince. The modern one is written in algorithms, in image, in influence. But the same principle endures. Awareness is survival. Those who understand perception shape the future. Those who cling to fairness become spectators of it. Machiavelli taught how to see through illusion. The Stoics taught how to live peacefully within it. To be both is to be free, to know when to fight, when to yield, when to wear the mask, and when to set it down. Because the world will always belong to those who see clearly. And the free will always be those who do not need to be seen at all. The dark wisdom of survival. Machiavelli never promised a better world. He promised understanding. He didn't teach cruelty. He exposed it. He didn't invent manipulation. He described the patterns that already ruled human nature. His words were not instructions for villains, but warnings for the naive. And for 5 centuries, they have echoed in every corner of power where people still pretend that goodness alone can protect them. He wrote The Prince not for monsters, but for survivors, those who must navigate a world that punishes idealism and rewards perception. A world where kindness, without boundaries, is exploited. Where honesty, without timing, is weaponized. Where justice, without strength, is ignored. His lesson was not to abandon morality, but to anchor it in realism. To see clearly so that when you choose to be kind, your kindness is not weakness. When you choose peace, your peace is not submission. If history teaches anything, it is that virtue without power changes nothing. But power without virtue destroys everything. Between these extremes lies the balance Machiavelli hinted at but could not name, the discipline to act decisively without losing one's soul. That balance is the work of philosophy, not politics. It is where Stoicism and Machiavellianism meet. Machiavelli gives us the eyes to see the world as it is. The Stoics give us the heart to live in it without becoming like it. Together, they describe the full architecture of human strength, external control guided by internal calm. The one who understands both becomes unbreakable. Look around the modern world, and you will see their lessons everywhere. In politics, where illusion wins elections. In media, where emotion drives truth. In personal life, where people mistake approval for meaning. The stage is larger now, the audience infinite, but the script remains the same. Power still depends on perception, and perception still belongs to those who understand fear and desire. The question, then, is not whether you should play the game. The question is whether you can play it consciously. Whether you can move through a world of manipulation without losing awareness. Whether you can stand in chaos and still choose reason. The Machiavellian mindset begins with awareness. Know what people want and what they fear. The Stoic mindset begins with restraint. Know what you can control and what you cannot. One without the other is incomplete. Awareness without restraint becomes exploitation. Restraint without awareness becomes ignorance. But when united, they form something close to wisdom, a realism that does not harden into cynicism, a discipline that does not decay into detachment. The modern world confuses kindness with weakness, morality with performance, and confidence with noise. But the quiet truth is this: the calmest person in the room still holds the most power. Because they are the least controlled by emotion. They cannot be baited, bribed, or bullied. They are the Stoic Machiavellian, aware of the darkness, but not consumed by it. To stop playing fair does not mean to abandon fairness. It means to stop assuming the world will reward it. It means acting from principle while understanding the cost. It means being as strategic as those who exploit you, but more conscious than those who deceive. It means accepting that survival sometimes demands edge, but life demands depth. Ruthlessness in its purest form is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is the refusal to lie to yourself about how the world works. Once you see it, you can no longer be manipulated by its illusions. You become harder to fool, harder to use, harder to break. You begin to choose when to bend and when to stand firm. You begin to act not from reaction, but from alignment. That is the paradox Machiavelli revealed and the Stoics perfected. That control is not the absence of emotion but the mastery of it. That power is not domination but direction. That the highest form of strategy is inner peace, and the highest form of peace is awareness. Every era needs its realists, those who dare to look at the machinery behind morality. But every realist must be tempered by wisdom, or their clarity becomes poison. The Stoic tempers the Machiavellian. He knows that power without virtue corrupts faster than weakness. He knows that control means nothing if you lose yourself in the process. In the end, what both philosophies demand is courage, the courage to see without illusion, and to live without denial. To understand the game but not be addicted to it. To build strength not from cruelty, but from consciousness. Because power, stripped of awareness, consumes its holder. And morality, stripped of realism, consumes its believer. Only those who unite both can walk through a ruthless world untouched. So stop waiting for fairness. The world was never designed to give it. Build your own rules, but build them with wisdom. Be ruthless in thought, but gentle in action. Be strategic in survival, but sincere in being. Let Machiavelli sharpen your mind. Let the Stoics steady your heart. And when the noise of ambition fades, when the lights of manipulation burn out, you will still stand quietly, unmoved, unbroken, and free. Because in the end, the ultimate power is not ruling others. It is ruling yourself.